The sun had barely cleared the Washington skyline when Derek Whitmore's phone buzzed for the third time. It wasn't his mother, and it wasn't his supervisor. It was the same group text from his coworkers, piling up like bad weather. "Have you seen what he posted? This guy's out of control. Check Truthline. It's everywhere." Derek lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to it make its faint tick every half-turn. He told himself not to look, but of course he looked. The post from Orion Hale sat at the top of every trending feed. Federal drones, overpaid, underworked. Time to thin the herd. Face with tears of joy, taxpayers deserve better than lazy desk jockeys. Beneath the words was a cartoon. Men and women in ill-fitting suits, running in circles with sacks of money labeled "your taxes." Some genius had added sound effects, honking horns, a cash register ringing. 3 million likes in 2 hours. The comments were worse. Finally someone said it. "Fire them all, we don't need them. Robots could do their jobs for free." Derek shut off the screen, but the words stayed burned into his eyes. Lazy desk jockey. He'd worked 12 years at the Federal Transit Agency, processing infrastructure grants and safety inspections that kept buses from breaking down on packed July afternoons. He wasn't glamorous, but he wasn't lazy either. The smell of burnt coffee drifted from his kitchen. He'd left the pot on overnight again. He swung his legs out of bed, feeling the dull stiffness in his knees from too many hours sitting at a desk. Outside, the streets glowed amber with early traffic. Inside, something felt heavier than usual, like a warning he couldn't name. At the office, the fluorescent lights hummed their usual cold welcome. Maya Brooks was already at her desk, her eyes rimmed red from no sleep. "You saw it?" she asked without looking up. "Yeah," Derek said. He set his briefcase down and tried to sound casual. "Guy doesn't even know what we do here." Maya's laugh was brittle. "Doesn't need to know. Everyone listens to him anyway." 2 cubicles down, Arjun Patel was typing like his life depended on it, fingers hammering the keyboard. He'd only been here 3 years, but his optimism was legendary. He kept saying things like, "Good work speaks for itself," and "they can't cut essential services." But even he didn't look up when Derek said hello. By 10 a.m., every screen in the office had a news alert running. Orion Hale's post wasn't just trending, cable shows were replaying it, pundits laughing, arguing whether federal workers were indeed dead weight. Derek couldn't focus on the grant files in front of him. The decimal points blurred. He tried to drown out the noise with an old jazz playlist, but the words slipped through like water under a door. Lazy, overpaid, useless. Around noon, an email hit everyone's inbox. Notice, efficiency audit, staff review pending. That was all it said. No details, no timeline, just enough to send a ripple of panic through the cubicles. Maya swore under her breath. Arjun froze mid-sentence. Derek felt his stomach twist. "Is this about the post?" Maya whispered. "Could be coincidence," Derek said. But he didn't believe it. Hale had just acquired TerraLink Systems, the private contractor that handled much of their data infrastructure. If he thought federal workers were worthless, it wouldn't just be words. It would be policy. The rest of the day passed in a haze of whispered speculation. Someone heard that outside consultants were coming to evaluate redundancies. Someone else said whole divisions might be outsourced. By 4 o'clock, the office felt less like a workplace and more like a waiting room outside bad news. Derek took the metro home. He avoided looking at the ad screens on the train, afraid Hale's smirk would be there too. He imagined strangers staring at him. Not Derek Whitmore, just one of them, a nameless bureaucrat with a target painted on his back. That night, the meme hit television. Talk show hosts cracked jokes about tax leeches. Social feeds turned cruel. Derek tried to laugh along with his wife when she asked what was so funny about the cartoon, but the laugh caught in his throat and came out strangled. At 2:37 a.m., he woke up sweating. He reached for his phone like it was oxygen. Another post from Hale. "Just imagine how much better things would run without the dead weight. Efficiency isn't just a dream, it's coming." Derek's heart thudded in his ears. He tried to tell himself it wasn't personal, but it felt personal. Every letter felt aimed at him, at Maya, at Arjun, at every good person he'd ever met who worked long hours for less pay than they deserved. Sleep never came back that night. Neither did the steady feeling that his work mattered. The next morning, the Federal Transit Agency's office building smelled like panic. Not loud panic, no shouting, no slammed doors, but the kind that hid in lowered voices and stiff shoulders. Derek arrived to find Maya staring at her computer screen, motionless, coffee cooling beside her. Arjun was scribbling notes in the margin of a grant report, not even seeing the words. "They're coming today," Maya murmured as Derek slid into his cubicle. "Who?" "The audit team." Derek hadn't even taken off his coat yet. "Already? They're here to observe workflows," Maya said, making air quotes with fingers that trembled just enough to spill a drop of coffee onto her desk. 3 people in suits walked past security with visitor badges at 8 sharp. By 10 o'clock, the visitors were everywhere, tall, silent men and women carrying tablets, jotting notes while they hovered over their shoulders. No one knew their names, but everyone knew their purpose. One of them stopped at Derek's cubicle. "How many applications do you process per week?" "Depends on the backlog," Derek said. "Give me a number," the man replied, eyes flat as glass. 30? Sometimes 40. The man typed something into his tablet and walked away without a word. Derek's chest tightened like someone had cinched a belt around his ribs. By noon, people weren't eating. Even Arjun skipped lunch, chewing a dry granola bar at his desk instead of joining Derek and Maya in the cafeteria. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder than usual, or maybe Derek just couldn't stop hearing them. When he tried to focus on his work, his thoughts kept slipping back to Hale's post. Lazy desk jockeys. Thin the herd. He imagined the strangers laughing at that cartoon. Did they know about the bus drivers in Kentucky who finally got new vehicles because of grants his team processed? Did they care? The hallway chatter wasn't better. "Did you hear they're cutting entire divisions at the Department of Energy? Someone said the Bureau of Water Safety lost 30% of staff overnight. Layoffs are already rolling through TerraLink." By 3, Maya was white-knuckling her pen. "If they fire me, who's gonna inspect the trains? I've got 12 years of safety reports in my head. You think they'll hire someone fresh out of college who's never set foot in a switching yard?" Derek tried to calm her down, but he didn't have any faith in his own words. "Let's not assume the worst." "Too late," she said, pushing away her paperwork. "The worst is already assuming us." When 5 o'clock came, no one moved. Usually, workers would pack up quick to beat traffic, but now they lingered at their desks as if leaving would make them targets. Derek finally shut off his computer, but his body felt heavy walking toward the metro. The clock read 2:04 a.m. Derek lay in bed listening to the furnace hum. His phone sat glowing on the nightstand. He'd promised himself not to look. He looked anyway. Another Truthline post from Hale. "Some people don't get it. You can't make progress dragging dead weight. #efficiency, #innovation. There was another meme. A cartoon forklift scooping up office workers and dumping them into a trash bin labeled outdated. Derek's thumb hovered over the power button. His chest felt hollow, but his heartbeat was a drumbeat in his throat. He thought about Maya's fear, about Arjun working twice as fast just to prove his worth. He thought about all those strangers online applauding, cheering for people like him to disappear. His wife stirred beside him. "Derek, it's late," she mumbled. "Please sleep." "I can't," he whispered, though she was already asleep again. He sat in the dark until sunrise. The next day, the audit team called everyone into the main conference room. The long oak table was covered in paper printouts and glowing tablets. "We're conducting an efficiency review," one of the visitors said in a smooth, clipped tone. "Our goal is to streamline operations, reduce redundancy, and optimize personnel placement." Maya's lips pressed tight. Derek could almost feel her anger vibrating through the table. Someone asked, "Does that mean layoffs?" The visitor smiled like a store mannequin. "We're not using that word yet." Another voice, shaky, "Are these changes coming from Orion Hale's office?" The visitor didn't answer. The meeting dissolved into whispers and darting glances. Afterward, Derek caught Arjun in the hallway, face pale as chalk. "They're asking for output metrics," Arjun said. "Every file processed, every hour logged. Like they can measure public service with a stopwatch." "Just keep your head down," Derek muttered, though it sounded more like a prayer than advice. That afternoon, Derek caught himself staring at his computer screen without typing for 15 minutes. His eyes burned. His stomach churned. He was working harder and accomplishing less. Every keystroke felt like it had to justify his existence. At 6 p.m., long after most had left, Maya appeared at his cubicle. "You okay?" "Yeah," Derek lied. She leaned against the divider, looking exhausted. "I'm not. I keep thinking, what if this is it? What if next week I'm carrying my stuff out in a cardboard box while Hale posts another meme?" Derek didn't know what to say. He just nodded. That night, as Derek rode the metro home, he stared at the dark window reflection of his own face. He barely recognized the man staring back, hollow cheeks, stiff jaw, eyes red from sleepless nights. When the train passed through Union Station, a busker played a slow tune on a battered saxophone. Derek stood there listening long after the train doors closed. The music was beautiful, but all he could think about was how fragile everything felt, how easily it could all vanish with a single post, a single decision from a man who would never know his name. The screws were tightening, and no one knew how much pressure they could take before breaking. On Monday, they weren't just visitors anymore. They had offices. A whole wing of the Federal Transit Agency building, once used for project storage, had been cleared out over the weekend. When Derek arrived that morning, he found the glass doors labeled "Transition Operations, Staff Access Restricted." "They moved in like they own the place," Maya whispered as they watched two of the consultants pass by, rolling sleek silver cases. "No correction. They do own the place. Hale does." The new arrivals didn't wear visitor badges anymore. They wore thin smiles and sharp suits. And they didn't hover politely over their shoulders now. They opened drawers, asked for spreadsheets, demanded explanations for every delay, every missing signature. By noon, the sound of printers ran non-stop, spitting out performance reviews no one remembered authorizing. "They're dissecting us?" Arjun muttered, slamming a stack of folders on his desk, "like frogs in biology class." At 3 p.m., one of the older staffers, Leonard Price, 20 years on the job, exploded in the hallway. "I don't need some kid with a tablet timing my bathroom breaks," Leonard roared, shoving his chair back so hard it hit the wall. Everyone froze as his voice carried across the floor. One of the audit team members stared at him calmly. "We're only measuring productivity metrics. I process bridge safety clearances, not flipping hamburgers," Leonard shouted, face flushed purple. "You think lives run on your stopwatch?" Security escorted him out for cooling off. Derek watched the whole thing, stomach twisting. Leonard was no slacker. If anything, he was obsessive. If he could snap, anyone could. That evening, Derek sat in his living room with the TV muted, watching news headlines scroll. "Hale demands cuts to useless bureaucrats. Audit targets federal transit spending waste. Memes mock taxpayer parasites." Every channel had Orion Hale's grin plastered across it. The man thrived on chaos, Derek realized. Every insult brought him more applause. When Derek finally went to bed, sleep lasted only 2 hours. He woke up gasping from a dream in which his ID badge wouldn't open the office door, and Hale stood on the other side laughing, holding a giant cartoon broom sweeping workers away like dust. At 4:12 a.m., Derek found himself sitting at his kitchen table in the dark, staring at an unpaid water bill. He paid it immediately, even though it wasn't due yet. Something about the red print terrified him, as if any sign of imperfection might prove Hale right. On Wednesday, Maya didn't come in. No text, no email. Derek called her twice with no answer. By noon she appeared, eyes bloodshot, hair unwashed. "Sorry," she muttered, sliding into her chair. "Couldn't get out of bed." "You okay?" Derek asked quietly. She gave a brittle laugh. "No. My son asked if we'll still have health insurance if I lose my job. He's 12, Derek. He's supposed to be worried about math tests, not deductibles. The words hit him like a body blow. He wanted to say something comforting, but what could he say? By Friday, the audit team released a preliminary report. Significant overlap in grant processing functions, potential for 30% reduction in staff without performance loss. The office fell silent when the email arrived. Derek's vision blurred as he read it. 30%. 30% meant names. It meant friends. It meant Maya, maybe Arjun, maybe him. In the afternoon, he overheard one of the consultants laughing into his phone near the elevators. Yeah, we'll have a list ready by next week. Easy cuts. These people barely do anything. The words stuck like thorns in Derek's mind. Barely do anything. He thought of every late night, every missed dinner, every weekend he'd come in to push a backlog through. None of it mattered. Not to them. That night, hail struck again. Just visited our audit team. Amazing to see how much dead weight can be trimmed. Taxpayers, you're welcome. Winking face. The meme this time was a giant cartoon axe chopping through a stack of office chairs. The comments cheered. Derek threw his phone onto the couch. But it didn't help. His ears rang with phantom laughter. He couldn't stop picturing Leonard's purple face in the hallway, Maya's trembling hands, Arjun's exhausted eyes. When his wife asked if he was okay, Derek said yes, but his voice cracked, betraying him. She reached out to squeeze his hand. He barely felt it. Friday evening, the office emptied out like a funeral procession. No weekend plans, no cheerful goodbyes. People gathered their things slowly, as though each stapler and notepad might be their last. Derek lingered in his cubicle long after dark, staring at his reflection in the black screen of his monitor. His own face looked strange, older, worn, already half erased. He imagined what it would feel like to come in on Monday and find his badge deactivated. His desk packed into a box by strangers. For the first time, the thought wasn't just sad. It was terrifying. And somewhere high above the city, Orion Hale was probably smiling. Monday morning, the office was already buzzing when Derek arrived. Not the usual chatter. This was sharper, frantic, like trapped flies. A stack of white envelopes sat on the receptionist's desk. No labels, no explanation. Just enough for everyone. Are these? Maya asked, her voice thin as paper. Nobody answered. One by one, people came forward and took an envelope. Some ripped them open immediately, hands shaking. Others held them at arm's length like bombs. Derek stared at his own, heart hammering. He looked at Maya. She didn't move. Arjun already had his open, eyes scanning fast. Derek forced himself to tear it open. Your position has been retained pending further review. Thank you for your continued service during this transitional period. His knees went weak with relief, but only for a moment. Because Maya was still frozen. She hadn't opened hers yet. Maya, he whispered. She tore it open with trembling fingers. Her lips moved as she read. Then she pressed the paper flat against the desk like she was trying to hold it down. Your position has been marked for elimination effective 30 days from receipt of this notice. Her eyes stayed dry, too stunned for tears. Well, she said faintly, guess I'm dead weight. Derek's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Arjun swore under his breath. This is insane. You're the best inspector we've got. You're the reason those commuter trains didn't derail last winter. Maya let out a laugh that wasn't a laugh. Guess that doesn't trend on Truthline. All day, the office felt like a battlefield after the bomb fell. Some people smiled with forced cheer for the safe ones. Others sat staring at their screens, envelopes clutched tight. Leonard Price was gone. 2 grant analysts from the other division were gone. Half of Maya's safety team is gone. At lunch, nobody spoke. The break room smelled of burnt coffee and fear. Derek tried to eat, but the sandwich turned to dust in his mouth. Arjun slammed his tray down. They're cutting people who actually do the work. This isn't efficiency, it's sabotage. Keep your voice down, Derek muttered. Why? So they can't hear us scream. Arjun shot back. You think Hale cares if we whisper? He's laughing at us right now. Derek didn't argue. He just stared at the table until the edges blurred. That night, Derek walked through his front door and collapsed onto the couch. His wife met him in the living room, worried in her eyes. "You look awful," she said gently. "What happened?" "They fired Maya," Derek said. His voice cracked. "And Leonard. And more are coming." She touched his shoulder. "You're still safe, right?" "For now," Derek said. But the words felt hollow. Safety wasn't real. Not when one man's jokes could turn into someone else's unemployment overnight. At 2 a.m., Derek woke to find himself standing in the kitchen without remembering how he got there. His phone was in his hand. Another Truthline post glared back at him. "First cuts are easy. More is coming soon. Hashtag efficiency is freedom." This one had a gif of dominoes falling. Each domino had a cartoon face on it. Derek's stomach clenched. He hurled the phone onto the counter. The sound startled his wife awake. "Derek? What's wrong?" "Nothing," he lied, breath coming fast. "Go back to sleep." But he didn't sleep again that night. He sat in the dark, heart pounding, imagining his own face on one of those falling dominoes. Over the next week, Maya packed her things in silence. She didn't fight it. She didn't call the union rep. She just cleared her desk the photos of her son, the train safety charts pinned to the divider, the old mug with "World's Best Mom" printed in fading letters. On her last day, Derek walked her out. The cold March air smelled of rain. She forced a smile. "Take care of yourself, okay?" she said. "You too," Derek managed. "You'll find something. You're too good not to." Maya gave him a look that was almost a pity. "You still think this is about being good?" She turned and walked away, her cardboard box clutched tight, disappearing into the metro crowd. Derek stood there long after she was gone, shivering, feeling like the city itself had turned its back. That evening, Hale posted a new meme. Government workers packing up like they just lost their free lunch. Good riddance. Faced with tears of joy, the image showed cartoon figures carrying boxes labeled taxpayer cash. The comments poured in, strangers celebrating layoffs like they were winning a game. Derek felt something crack inside. This wasn't just policy. It was humiliation as entertainment. He closed his laptop, but the laughter didn't stop. It echoed in his head as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, until the lines of light from the street lamps blurred into bars. He felt caged in his own home. By the end of the month, Derek was a ghost in his own office. He worked longer hours but got less done, terrified every mistake was being watched. Arjun tried to talk to him, but Derek barely heard him anymore. He started avoiding eye contact with the audit team. He stopped checking his email until late at night, dreading what new report might be waiting. He stopped eating lunch altogether, and the smell of food made him nauseous. The fear wasn't just of losing his job. It was fear of being laughed at while it happened, fear of being turned into a punchline by a man who'd never met him but still had the power to crush him. Derek had always thought of himself as steady, the kind of man who could handle pressure. But now even walking past the glass doors of the transition office made his chest seize up. One evening, as he left the building, he caught himself scanning the rooftops not for snipers, but for cameras, for some invisible audience waiting to see him fail. He wasn't sure when he'd started imagining that. But once he noticed it, he couldn't stop. By April, Orion Hale's posts weren't just occasional barbs. They were daily salvos, each one sharper than the last. Every morning, the staff at the Federal Transit Agency arrived with that sick churn in their stomachs, wondering if Hale had mentioned them by name. He hadn't yet, but it didn't matter. Every meme felt aimed right at them. Why do we need people to rubber stamp bus routes? AI can do it in seconds. Trim the fat. Rocket. Federal payroll. America's most expensive comedy show. Imagine if your tax dollars went to something useful instead of these clowns. The memes grew crueler. Cartoon bureaucrats sleeping at their desks, drooling on paperwork. Animated pigs eating out of troughs labeled public funds. Cable news hosts picked them up like shiny toys, replaying the insults while laughing over bright graphics. Even radio call-ins joined the chorus. Ordinary people, strangers Derek would never meet, cheered the layoffs like they were rooting for a sports team. The audit team finished their second report, another 20% to be cut. The building felt like it was under siege. No one spoke in the hallways anymore. People hunched over keyboards like condemned prisoners scratching out last statements. Even the copy machine sounded accusatory, spitting paper like verdicts. Derek watched Arjun working 15-hour days, bleary-eyed, trying to outpace the axe. "Slow down," Derek muttered. Arjun didn't look up. "Can't. They're tracking everything. If I can push 50 files a week instead of 30, maybe I will survive." "You think that'll save you?" Derek asked. Arjun froze, finally meeting his gaze. "I don't know, but I can't just sit here and wait." One evening, Derek left work past midnight, long after the audit team's offices had gone dark. The metro station was empty, fluorescent lights buzzing like insects. On the wall, someone had scrawled in marker, "Parasites out." Derek stared at it, heart pounding. He didn't know if it was aimed at him, at federal workers in general, or at someone else entirely. But in his exhausted mind, it felt personal. He imagined Hale's laughing face behind every commuter who walked past. When the train arrived, Derek stepped inside and caught his reflection in the window. Pale, hollow-eyed, suit rumpled like he'd slept in it. He looked like a man already fired. For a moment, just a moment, the thought crossed his mind. What if I didn't get off at my stop? What if I just stayed on until wherever? He shook it off violently, gripping the metal pole until his knuckles went white. But the thought lingered like smoke. Derek stopped telling his wife about the posts. At first he tried to laugh them off with her, "Can you believe this guy?" But now the humor was gone. Now he just stayed quiet, scrolling in the dark, heart pounding every time Hale's account uploaded a new sneer. His wife noticed anyway. "You're not sleeping. You're barely eating." "Derek, talk to me." "I'm fine," he lied, voice flat. She put her hand on his arm. "This job is killing you." He didn't answer because deep down he feared she was right. But it wasn't just the job, it was being turned into a punchline. It was the way strangers could laugh at his life like it was a bad sitcom. Janet Kells, the union leader, finally held a press conference on the courthouse steps. Cameras flashed as she called Hale's campaign inhuman, reckless, and corrosive to public trust. That night, Hale posted another meme. This time it showed a cartoon union boss stuffing bags of money into her pockets while lazy workers slept behind her. The comments turned vicious. Janet received threats online. The next day she arrived at the office pale and tight-lipped, but still defiant. "They can fire me if they want," she said in the break room. "But they're not firing the truth. This isn't efficiency, it's contempt." No one spoke. Some were grateful she'd said it aloud. Others were terrified she'd painted a target on them all. Late one night, Derek sat at his desk long after everyone else had gone. The building hummed with emptiness. His eyes blurred as he tried to finish yet another backlog report. From the corner of his eye, he thought he saw someone standing by the door. He turned sharply, nothing there. But when he looked back at his screen, the words on the grant form seemed to twist and shift. For a moment he swore he saw them spell out, "You're next." He blinked hard, rubbed his eyes. Just fatigue, just stress. But when he finally left the office, every shadow in the parking garage felt alive, watching. A week later, Hale posted a new cartoon about a conveyor belt of bureaucrats dropping into an incinerator labeled reform. One of the cartoon figures wore glasses and a blue tie that looked disturbingly like Derek's. The resemblance wasn't exact, but it didn't have to be. To Derek, it felt intentional, like Hale had reached through the screen and pointed directly at him. Arjun tried to calm him down. "It's generic. Just a coincidence." Derek shook his head, voice low and shaking. "No. He knows. He's watching us." Arjun frowned. "Derek, you need sleep. You're scaring me." But Derek couldn't stop checking Hale's feed every hour, waiting for the next strike. The laughter online felt louder than ever. By the end of April, the office looked hollowed out. Entire sections of cubicles stood empty. The survivors, if you could call them that, worked in silence, waiting for the axe to fall again. And every night, Derek rode the metro home with that same thought pressing heavier on his chest. What if there's nowhere to get off? Derek woke to the sound of his phone buzzing on the nightstand. 3:14 a.m. He stared at the screen. No missed calls, no messages. Just the dull glow of the home screen, but he swore it had vibrated. Sleep didn't come back. When he finally gave up and stumbled to the kitchen for water, the silence felt unnatural, like the whole apartment was holding its breath. He poured a glass, hand trembling slightly, then froze. Outside the window, parked across the street, was a black sedan. Engine running. No headlights. Derek stood there for a full minute watching. The car didn't move. His heart began to race. Are they watching me? Is this Hale? He closed the blinds and sat in the dark, glass untouched, pulse hammering. By the time he dared peek again, the car was gone. The next morning, Derek was 30 minutes late. His tie was crooked. His hands smelled faintly of stale coffee. Janet glanced up as he hurried in, worrying, shadowing her face. "You okay?" she asked softly. "Fine," Derek lied again, sliding into his chair. But he wasn't fine. His inbox was exploding 50 new messages overnight. Half of them marked urgent, and his brain refused to focus. Midway through drafting a grant review, Derek noticed something strange on the memo line of a PDF. The letters OH repeated faintly like a watermark. Orion Hale. He leaned closer, heart pounding. When he blinked, the letters vanished. Just standard federal letterhead. I'm seeing things now, he thought. God, I'm losing it. That night, his wife tried again. You barely talk to me anymore. The kids ask why you're always angry. Derek, this isn't just work. This is eating you alive. I said I'm fine, he snapped. Stop saying that, she shouted, slamming her hand on the counter. Fine people don't scream at their kids over spilled juice. Fine people don't wake up at 3 a.m. pacing the hallway. The words hit harder than any meme. Derek stared at her, chest tight, then muttered, I just need to get through this month. She shook her head. And then what? What's left of you by then? 2 nights later, Derek stayed in the office past midnight again. The building was empty, lights dimmed. He was photocopying files when the machine jammed. A soft laugh echoed from the corridor. Derek froze. Hello? No answer. Just that same laugh, closer this time, a sound he'd heard online, in clips of Orion Hale chuckling during interviews. Derek dropped the papers and ran to the hallway. No one there. But taped to his office door was a sticky note with a single word in thick black marker. Soon, his blood went cold. Hands shaking, he peeled it off only to see it was blank on both sides. His mind had filled in the letters. I'm cracking. I'm actually cracking, he realized, pressing the paper to his forehead like a cold rag. That Friday, after another brutal day of layoffs, 30 more people were gone, including Arjun. Derek left work numb. He didn't take the metro home. Instead, he wandered until he found himself on the roof of the Federal Plaza parking garage. 8 stories up, the city humming below. For a long time, he just stared at the headlights sliding through the streets like veins of light. His thoughts spiraled. If I disappear, maybe the noise stops. Maybe Hale stops laughing. Maybe my kids don't have to see me like this. A cold wind whipped across the rooftop. He stepped closer to the ledge, toes over the edge. One more step and there'd be nothing but air and silence. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Reflexively, he glanced at it. A text from his wife. Dinner's cold. Are you okay? 3 words under it from his daughter, sent earlier. Good night, Daddy Red Heart. The spell broke. Derek stumbled back from the edge, shaking so hard he dropped his phone. It clattered across the concrete. He sank to his knees and let out a ragged sob he didn't know he'd been holding for months. The next morning, Derek didn't go to work. He couldn't. His chest felt crushed under a weight he couldn't name. When Janet called, he ignored it. When his boss emailed, he deleted it. For the first time in 20 years, Derek called in sick not because of a cold, not because of the flu, but because he simply couldn't move. He sat on the edge of his bed staring at the wall, feeling like a ghost in his own house. Outside, the meme storm raged on. Orion Hale posted another cartoon, this one showing a giant boot stomping a line of government workers. Derek swore the figure in glasses looked even more like him this time. But Derek didn't check the comments, didn't turn on the news, didn't answer his phone. Because for the first time in months, Derek wasn't thinking about surviving the job. He was thinking about surviving himself. Derek's world shrank to four walls. Monday came and went without him showing up at the office. He sent a single-line email, taking medical leave, doctor's orders, and then switched off his phone. For the first 2 days, he barely moved from the couch. Janet set food in front of him. Sometimes he ate, sometimes he didn't. Their daughter tiptoed around the house, watching her father as if he'd been swapped out for a stranger. By Wednesday, Janet had had enough. "We're going to see someone," she said firmly, grabbing the car keys. Derek tried to protest, but his voice cracked before the words formed. He followed her silently, head bowed like a child being marched to the principal's office. Dr. Chun listened patiently as Derek haltingly described the sleepless nights, the panic, the hallucinations, the rooftop. When he finally stopped talking, she didn't look shocked. She just scribbled a note and spoke in a calm, steady tone. "You're in a state of acute stress reaction," she said. "Left unchecked, it's going to spiral into major depressive disorder if it hasn't already. You need to step back completely. Work is not an option right now." Derek stared at his hands. "If I step back, I'll lose everything." Dr. Chun shook her head. "If you don't, you'll lose yourself first." Back at the agency, Derek's absence was noticed immediately and not kindly. "Medical leave?" sneered Hale in a group email leaked to several managers. "Guess the pressure weeded out another one. Makes my job easier." Arjun, who'd been fired the week before, showed up anyway, slamming his badge on the security desk. "This is what he does to people," Arjun shouted. "He breaks them and calls it efficiency." Security escorted him out while Hale posted another meme within the hour. This one a cartoon of a crying bureaucrat clutching a doctor's note, while a clock ticked ominously. The caption, "Government time off, sponsored by your taxes." Janet saw it online that evening. She clenched her fists, heart pounding. "He's talking about you," she said to Derek, who only stared blankly at the television. On Thursday, Janet drove to the agency herself. She cornered Derek's direct supervisor, a weary man named Reynolds who looked 10 years older than last month. "You let this happen," Janet said, voice low but shaking. "You watched him fall apart and you did nothing." Reynolds rubbed his temples. "You think I can stop Hale? I'm one email away from being next." Janet slammed her hand on his desk. "Then grow a spine. You're not just losing employees, you're losing people. My husband almost," she stopped, choking back the rest. "You know what? Forget it. If you won't protect him, I will." She left before Reynolds could respond, her heels clicking like gunfire down the hall. By Friday, Hale's relentless mocking had drawn national attention. News outlets picked up the story of mass federal layoffs and connected it to a spike in stress leave cases. When a journalist caught wind of Derek's breakdown, though his name wasn't yet public, the coverage shifted tone. Cable news ran segments showing screenshots of Hale's posts beside statistics on workplace burnout. Hashtags like #HumanNotCost and #StopHale began trending. Hale doubled down. In an evening live stream, he laughed off the criticism. "If they can't handle a few memes, maybe they shouldn't be running your government." The audience of diehard fans roared approval, but something subtle changed. Mainstream outlets stopped treating him as a maverick and started framing him as reckless. That night, Derek sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. "They're talking about me," he whispered. Janet knelt beside him. "Let them. You didn't do anything wrong. I can't go back there." "Then you won't." For the first time in weeks, Janet saw something break through his numbness, a spark of relief. It scared her almost as much as his despair. Saturday morning, the doorbell rang. Derek opened it to find Arjun holding 2 cups of coffee. "You're not answering calls," Arjun said. "Figured I'd come in person. You okay?" "No," Derek admitted. "Good. Means you're still honest." They sat on the porch, the autumn wind rattling the leaves. "Listen," Arjun said. "There's a reporter digging into Hale. They need stories, real stories, not just statistics. You want to hit back? This is how." Derek hesitated. "I'm not strong enough to fight him." "Then let me fight for you. But you have to tell the truth." Derek looked down at the steam curling from his cup. For the first time in months, the idea of telling someone everything about fear, hallucinations, and the rooftop didn't feel like weakness. Felt like breathing again. Derek sat across from Maya Torres, a sharp-eyed investigative reporter whose calm tone disguised razor instincts. Her notebook lay open on the coffee table. Janet perched on the arm of the couch, arms crossed, ready to intervene if Derek faltered. "You don't have to go on record," Maya said softly. "Anonymous sources can still be powerful." Derek shook his head. His voice came out hoarse but steady. "No, he doesn't get to pretend we're nameless anymore." Janet's lips pressed together, but she nodded. For the next 2 hours, Derek poured everything out. The insomnia, the panic, the humiliations. He described the rooftop night in chilling detail. Maya never interrupted, just scribbled notes furiously, occasionally glancing up with something like sorrow in her eyes. When he finished, she clicked off her recorder. "You realize what happens after this," she said. "He'll come for you, publicly." Derek exhaled, long and shaky. "He already has. I just didn't have a name tag on my back yet." Monday morning, the piece went live. Federal workers break down highlights human toll of Orion Hale's purge. It detailed Derek's collapse without sensationalizing it. Maya's writing was clinical, factual but laced with quiet anger. Quotes from doctors, economists, even other anonymous employees painted a grim picture. Within hours, Derek's name was trending. Colleagues texted in shock. Some sent messages of support. Others went silent, afraid of being linked to him. And then Hale struck. On his Truth account, Hale posted an edited photo. Derek's agency ID photo superimposed onto a cartoon body curled up in a crib. The caption, "America's workforce crying for nap time." The post went viral. Late-night shows picked it up, some mocking Hale, others mocking Derek. A cable host sneered, "If you can't handle a tough boss, maybe try yoga instead of whining." The next day, Hale ordered a formal inquiry into Derek's work record. Letters arrived threatening to strip his benefits. Anonymous calls clogged their home phone. That evening, Derek sat in the kitchen, trembling hands clutching a glass of water he couldn't bring to his lips. "I can't do this," he whispered. "They're going to ruin us." Janet knelt beside him, steady and fierce. "No, Derek. He's trying to scare you back into silence. That means you hurt him. That means it's working." Arjun called, voice low and urgent. "You're not alone. I've got 3 more people willing to go public, but they're scared stiff. You need to stay visible. If you go dark now, they'll never speak." Derek wanted to vanish. Instead, he agreed to appear on camera. The studio lights burned hot. Derek's palms sweated through makeup powder as the anchor asked gentle but piercing questions. "Why speak out now?" "Because this isn't just me," Derek said. His voice cracked, but he kept going. "People are being treated like scrap metal. We're not numbers you can delete from a spreadsheet. We're fathers, mothers, friends. You don't get to humiliate people and call it progress." When the interview aired, messages flooded in hundreds of strangers thanking him, sharing their own stories of workplace abuse. But woven among them were threats. "Better hope your kid doesn't walk alone. You just painted a target on your family." Janet read them all, fury simmering behind her calm face. "Let him try," she muttered, deleting the messages before Derek could see. By midweek, the narrative had changed. News outlets highlighted Hale's memes alongside rising suicide hotline calls among federal employees. Mental health organizations called for investigations. Polls showed Hale's approval dropping sharply outside his loyal base. Even some lawmakers previously silent condemned his behavior as reckless and dehumanizing. But Hale wasn't retreating. If anything, he sounded more defiant. "They want to scare me with sob stories?" he said during a rally livestream. "I eat bureaucrats' tears for breakfast." The crowd cheered, but cracks were showing. His sponsors began issuing carefully worded statements. His allies stopped tagging him in posts. Thursday night, Derek woke at 3 a.m. to glass shattering in the driveway. He bolted upright, heart racing, and saw their mailbox smashed open. A brick lay on the pavement, spray painted with the words, "Quit." Janet called the police. When they arrived, they treated it like a prank. But Derek recognized the message. Hale's online army was now spilling into the real world. "Maybe they're right," Derek murmured after the officers left. "Maybe I should quit. Just disappear." Janet grabbed his shoulders. "No. If you back down now, they win. If you hold on just a little longer, this blows up in his face. I promise you." Her voice shook, but her eyes were steel. Derek nodded slowly, breathing hard, choosing to believe her because he had nothing else left to believe. Friday morning, Arjun showed up again, this time with a flash drive. "Maya found something," he said. "Financial records. Hale's cutting jobs to funnel contracts to companies he's tied to. It's not just cruelty, it's corruption." Derek stared at the drive. "You're saying we can take him down?" Arjun grinned grimly. "I'm saying by Monday, he'll be running from Congress instead of bullying you." For the first time in weeks, Derek felt something like hope, fragile, trembling, but alive. Monday morning dawned gray and damp. Derek barely slept, lying awake listening for every creak and tire on the road. Janet brewed coffee strong enough to melt a spoon. "Ready?" she asked. "No," he said, "but I'm doing it anyway." They drove to Maya's office, flash drive in Janet's purse. Inside were files showing how Orion Hale's cuts funneled contracts to companies run by his brother-in-law. Millions skimmed while thousands lost jobs. By noon, Maya's article hit every major news site. Documents tie Orion Hale to federal contract kickbacks. Cable news anchors dissected charts of shell companies. Lawmakers called for hearings. Hashtags demanding Hale's resignation trended worldwide. But Hale wasn't folding. At an afternoon press conference, his smile looked brittle, his voice strained. "These are lies from weaklings who can't keep up with progress," he barked. "I'll sue every one of them personally." The cameras caught something new. Not confidence, but sweat beading along his hairline. That night, Derek and Janet put Lily to bed early. They ate dinner in silence, waiting for the next blow. It came at 10:43 p.m. A car screeching outside, headlights flooding their living room. Derek yanked the curtains back in time to see two masked figures leap from an SUV and hurl something flaming into the yard. He dashed out with Janet close behind, heart pounding, only to find a Molotov cocktail sputtering in the wet grass. The fire never spread, but the message was clear. Police took a statement again, still unconcerned. "Probably just punks," one officer muttered. Janet nearly exploded at him. Derek didn't hear much, his pulse roared in his ears. "I can't let Lily live like this," he whispered. "We're targets now." Janet gripped his hands. "It's almost over. You can't let him scare you off now, not when he's this desperate." By Tuesday, congressional committees were circling. Sponsors cut ties. Former allies lined up to condemn him on live TV. The smug certainty in his voice cracked. "Deep state sabotage," he ranted on a live stream, eyes wild. "These bureaucrats like that crybaby Derek, they're trying to take me down because I work too hard." The insults landed flat. The meme pages that once loved him went quiet. His own staff leaked emails showing he'd ordered them to make an example of whistleblowers. Wednesday morning, Derek woke to pounding on his door. It was Arjun, out of breath. "Turn on the TV," he gasped. On every channel, live footage of FBI agents swarming Hale's townhouse. Boxes carried out. Reporters shouting questions Hale refused to answer. "They've got him," Arjun said, grinning so wide it looked painful. "Wire fraud, kickbacks, abuse of authority. He's done." Derek felt his knees give out. Janet caught him as he sank to the floor, laughing and crying at the same time. The tension that had coiled around his chest for months suddenly loosened, not gone, but breaking apart like a storm lifting. In the days that followed, messages poured in. Strangers thanking Derek, colleagues offering apologies, mental health groups inviting him to speak. But the adrenaline wore off fast. The threats didn't vanish overnight. The smashed mailbox still sat at the curb. Sleep came in snatches, filled with dreams of flaming bottles and Hale's mocking grin. One night, Derek sat alone in the living room, Lily's crayon drawings scattered on the coffee table. He thought about how close he'd come to giving up, how thin the line had been between silence and speaking out. Janet came in quietly and put a hand on his shoulder. "You did it," she said softly. "He's gone." Derek shook his head. "We did it. And it's not over. There are more Hales out there." She smiled faintly. "Maybe. But now there's you out there too." 2 weeks later, Derek testified before Congress. Cameras flashed as he raised his hand to take the oath. His voice shook at first, but steadied as he spoke about mental health, fear, and dignity. "People aren't machines," he told the room. "You can't break them down for profit and call it leadership. Someone always pays the price. For me, it was panic attacks and nearly losing everything. For others, it's worse." The room was silent when he finished. Even hardened lawmakers looked moved. Hale, now indicted, watched from a holding cell. That night, Derek walked alone through Union Station. The marble floors gleamed under soft light. For the first time in months, he wasn't glancing over his shoulder. He stood under the massive arched ceiling and breathed in, long and deep, feeling the echo of his own heartbeat instead of Hale's voice. Janet texted, "You okay?" He smiled, thumbed a reply, "Yeah." For the first time, yeah. Outside, the city lights blinked one by one, steady and bright. The indictment came fast, the trial faster. Orion Hale appeared in court looking smaller, as if the expensive suit couldn't hold him up anymore. His swagger was gone. The man who once laughed at federal workers and posted mocking memes about lazy bureaucrats now muttered to his lawyers, eyes darting around like a trapped animal. Derek watched only part of it on TV. He didn't need to see every detail to know justice was finally moving. 2 months after Hale's arrest, the old rhythms of work crept back in. Agencies rehired critical staff, though not fast enough for the people who'd lost homes in the layoffs. Derek returned to his desk in the Department of Infrastructure, but something had changed. People stopped him in the hallway not to gossip, but to thank him. He saw the gratitude in their eyes, mixed with something heavier, fear that it could all happen again. At night, Derek still woke up sweating. The sound of tires outside sent his heart racing. Janet kept a baseball bat by the bed. But Lily slept peacefully again, no longer asking why people wanted to hurt her daddy. One Saturday morning, Derek found her sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, drawing with her favorite purple crayon. "What's that?" he asked. "It's you," she said, "standing on a mountain, and the bad man is falling off." Derek knelt down, throat tight. "Do I look happy?" She nodded. "Yeah, you beat him." Invitations poured in universities, worker advocacy groups, even mental health organizations wanted him to tell his story. At first, Derek said no. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like someone who barely survived. But one night, after another call from a stranger thanking him for giving them courage, Derek looked at Janet and said, "Maybe it's time." The first event was at a small college in Maryland. He expected 20 people. Instead, the auditorium was packed. Students, teachers, laid-off workers, some wearing union pins, others just curious, filled every seat. Derek told them about panic attacks in the supply closet, about his smashed mailbox, about the terror of seeing his daughter's face pressed to the window while masked men fled into the night. And then he told them about the moment he almost gave up, when silence seemed safer than truth. "I'm not brave," he finished. "I was scared every single day. But I learned something. Fear doesn't go away when you hide. It only goes away when you drag it into the light." The standing ovation startled him. But what mattered were the faces, tearful, determined, nodding in recognition. He wasn't alone. When Orion Hale was sentenced to 12 years for fraud and conspiracy, the courtroom erupted in whispers. He still tried to sneer for the cameras, but no one was laughing with him anymore. His memes had vanished from the internet. His companies, stripped of government contracts, dissolved. Editorials called it a turning point, a warning to any billionaire who thought public servants were expendable props. Federal agencies quietly rolled back some of Hale's cost-cutting policies. Mental health programs for government workers, long underfunded, finally got attention. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. But something had shifted. People saw the cost of cruelty not just in dollars, but in human lives unraveling under pressure. Months later, Derek walked home alone from the metro after a late meeting. The sun had already set, the streets lit by soft yellow lamps. He passed the corner where, months ago, he'd thought someone was following him. Tonight, there was no one there, just the quiet hum of distant traffic. For the first time, the silence didn't scare him, comforted him. At home, Janet and Lily were making cookies. Flour dusted Lily's nose as she handed him one, still warm. "Is the bad man still in jail?" she asked. "Yeah," Derek said, crouching to her level. "And he's not getting out for a long time." "Good," she grinned. "Now you can sleep." The next weekend, Derek stood again in Union Station, just as he had the night Hale fell. But this time he wasn't alone. Janet held Lily's hand on one side, Arjun on the other, Maya walking behind them with her recorder off. They stood under the massive vaulted ceiling as travelers hurried past, the lights bright and steady overhead. "Funny," Arjun said. "I always thought this place felt cold." "Not tonight," Derek said. He looked up at the lights, unwavering, unafraid, and for the first time in months, the weight in his chest was gone.